welcome to Into You, the podcast where I take a deep dive into getting to know the best you. My name is Adam Straughan, and today I have with me a very talented performer. He is an actor from Medicine Hat, Alberta, Canada, who currently resides in New York City, and has been in such TV shows as Good Witch, Star Trek Discovery, The Expanse, as well as performing in stage shows like Paradise Square and Avenue Q. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome to the podcast Mr. Jeremy Crittenden. How are you doing, buddy?
Hey, I'm well. How are you?
I'm really good, thank you. Yeah, I mean, we were just kind of talking before we hit record there, and we're talking about the crazy weather we've had in the UK, and things have gone insane. Like the UK basically came to a standstill at certain points, but yeah, we're back to normal UK weather. But yeah, I'm doing really well, thank you. Enjoyed a couple of days off before I go back to work, and yeah, one of them I'm spending some time with your lovely self. So tell me, how are you doing? How's your week been?
So far, so good. I mean, it's still really hot here. If you hear thunder in the background, it's because, of course, as soon as we started recording, a giant lightning storm kicks up. But, you know,
man,
that's how it goes, I guess.
What have you been up to this week?
Not too much, really. I actually just got through another spell of COVID. So I've been kind of like getting back to work after being in quarantine for, I don't know, 5 days, although it felt like 100. I don't know how we did that for, you know, an entire year or 2 years or however long it was. 5 days was driving me crazy. So just kind of like getting back to the swing of being out and about and back to work. And I got my monkeypox vaccine today. You know, all the exciting stuff.
All the good stuff, right? But yeah, tell me. So obviously, you know, I had COVID. So it was like I went 2 years of avoiding it and then I got it. So I'd already been vaccinated. So I'm guessing the symptoms were a lot less severe than like the kind of first wave. But I kept my like sense of taste and smell. The only thing that kind of affected me really was I felt a little bit like I had a heavy cold for maybe 3 days and my throat was burning for like a whole day. And then that was it. And then the cough came after I was testing negative. So how was it for you?
Oh, interesting. This was my third go round. So I had original recipe COVID. Back
man.
like before we even really realized it was going around New York. So I had it like in January, world shut down in March. And it's funny because there was a Facebook post that I saw that I made during that time going like, what is this hell flu that I have? You know, we were joking that it could be the thing that was going around overseas. And then my doctor later was like, yeah, no, that was probably COVID. And then I got it again a few months later. And that's when I lost my taste and smell, which was so messed up. But this last time, it was actually really just like an intense 18 hours. It felt like a really bad flu for 18 hours. Oof. And then all of a sudden, it was like, you know, early evening on the day that it was really bad, that it was just starting to lighten up. Like I could feel as the minutes went by, improvement. It was bizarre. I've never experienced anything like that. So thanks, vaccine, for making it 18 hours.
Absolutely. That's crazy. It's so strange today, even though like there's been a massive spike in the UK of like people getting it who've never had it. And all the symptoms are so different. I've never known a virus that affects people in different ways. It's absolutely crazy. During that time as well, you've recently been doing some Instagram lives, right? So you've just been just been like chatting to a lot of your subscribers. And I know you did like a red flags thing recently, which was hilarious. I loved that. But yeah, tell me all about that. What was the kind of thinking behind, did you just fancy like chatting to like, you know, people that follow you, or what was the thinking behind that?
It was something that I had been thinking about for a while. My following on social media over the last year has really just been growing so quickly, and that's really been exciting. So it was something that I've been thinking about doing because I was curious about it. I wanted to see how it would go. I wanted to see if I was going to be any good at it. Really sort of engaging as a creator online over the last little bit kind of came out of, well, really out of quarantine, out of going like, I need a creative outlet. I need to be able to do something. I don't like sitting around. Even just as an actor, I don't like waiting for a job to come along. I don't like waiting for someone to give me permission to do something. Yeah. So it felt like creating stuff online felt like an opportunity to sort of take the bull by the horns and, you know, do things on my own terms. So, and it just been a lot of experimenting. So the live was just kind of like a new experiment. Can I do this? I would love to be a talk show host. That would be the coolest job in the world. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it was fun to do because it's also like a really interesting it's so interactive. You know, it's not like this where it's like, you know, two people having sort of a conversation. You're kind of having a conversation with however many people are on that live at that time. So when there's like 65 people on the live and everybody's kind of putting in, you know, comments into the chat, that has to be a part of it. So it was a really different experience for me and I really enjoyed it. So I've done 2 now. I'm trying to do 1 a week. And I'm really excited about it. It's been really fun so far.
I totally feel that. And the reason why was, so during lockdown is when I started the podcast. And as well as that, like I've done a lot of like YouTube stuff as well, which came before the podcast, and that all spawned just from lockdown. And especially the podcast itself came from, in the UK, we have like an NHS app. And if you've been around somebody who's tested positive, then it, like, we call it being pinged, right? And then you have to, during like the early kind of, you know, era of COVID, if that happened, you had to isolate as well, just in case. So that happened to me. Like I didn't have COVID, but I was in the vicinity of somebody that did. So I had to isolate for 10 days. And it was in those 10 days, I was like, you know, that thing I've been throwing around in my head for like years about doing a podcast, now is the time. And I think that's one big thing of, you know, don't get me wrong, the pandemic was horrendous, but being locked down, you know, being in lockdown, I think for creatives like yourself and like I think it really did like reignite kind of a fire in us where we're like, right, I want to do something. Now I've got the time to really sit down and think about it. I want to capitalize on this time in some way. And like, you know, you started doing this, I started doing it. And it's great. And it's nice that, you know, unfortunately it took that for that to happen, but it is nice that we made something creative out of that. And I think that's so, so important, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It has been one of the most like gratifying things to start something creative and to know that you're finding an audience for it and to hear from people that it's making a difference. Like, it's so nice getting messages from people that just go like, oh, I really enjoyed that live, or this video really made me smile, or, you know, that brightened up my day. That's been really incredible.
I agree. Like I started doing a lot of YouTube stuff, and I mean, it was like 2020 when I first started it. And then what was really nice was it's exactly what you've just said there. I started it as selfish pursuit just to like pass the time, really, just to do something. And then I started getting messages from people saying how much like me checking out some things that they're really into really meant so much to them. And I had like this one beautiful comment, I'll share it with you at some point, where it was like a really detailed comment, this person just talking about their life and how watching like my kind of stuff I put out was an escape for them. And I was just, it blew me away. And I was like, wow, I was not expecting that. And, you know, it's like, it's just blown up. It's become this thing, which is amazing. I've got some incredible experiences from that. And it all started from just that one moment in lockdown of just thinking, should I give this a go? Why not? I've got nothing to lose. And that's it. Yeah. Why not?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So we are going to get into you being obviously an actor and a performer. But before we get to that, I need to ask you, Jeremy, you're a technical moderator for Barry's. What does that even mean?
Okay. That's a great question. I don't love the job title, but I think they were trying to incorporate, like, there's sort of 2 elements to that job. So first of all, it's on the Barry's X platform, which is, I think it's just North America right now, but it's an at-home fitness platform. So from the New York studio, we do 6 live workouts every single day that people can participate in real time. And then some of them also go video on demand on the platform for the subscribers to be able to do whenever they want. So it's the technical moderator job. There's 2 elements to it. The moderating part, which is, you know, welcoming people into the workout live, dealing with any tech problems, making sure they have everything they need, and being there in the chat for them throughout the workout. The technical side of it is operating the cameras, the audio equipment, and just making sure that the stream happens. And that's what I really love. That's the part of the job that I was excited about doing the most. Because as much as I'm an actor, I also want my career to be very much behind the camera as well. I've always wanted to direct. So yeah, that's kind of what drew me to that. And I love fitness. It's become a really important part of my life over the last few years. So yeah, it's kind of a great mix of all of the things that I really love.
I love that. It's like it is a combination, is exactly what you just said there. It's a combination of all the things you love and bringing it together. I'm aware of Barry's. We obviously have one in London, and I see like various celebrities that go to it. But yeah, I just didn't know what that kind of term meant in regards to that. So that's really interesting in terms of live streams, and you get to kind of manage that and almost kind of, do you make all of the decisions of exactly how that'll look when you put the kind of feed out there and everything like that?
Yeah, so we have a standard sort of setup in the studio, but when you're shooting the workout itself,
Mm.
uh, yeah, it's a little bit of improv.
Hey.
Um, you know, you essentially know a lot of what the instructors are going to be doing based on the day. You know, there's certain body parts that you're focused on for that day.
Mm.
Um, so you know generally what's going to happen, but in terms of, you know, second by second, you really have to, we've got two different cameras, two different robotic cameras, and you really have to be sort of following the instructor and thinking one step ahead of them to make sure that you've got the right shot or you're about to cut to the next right shot. And it's, yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a great challenge.
I love that. I love that. There's so many transferable skills as well that you can take from that. And, you know, when the days come when you do step behind the camera for whatever that may be, there's so many transferable skills you can take from that experience and go, yeah, you know what? I did this kind of thing. I remember that. I can use that again. So that's fascinating. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Speaking of performance, let's go back in time. Let's go back to baby Jeremy. All
my
God. So, I mean, what'll be really interesting, I'm really fascinated by this because I come from a background of acting. I've trained as an actor for all of my life. And I've done a lot of stage, some film, some TV as well. And I'm really, really interested to share experiences with you and get into this. So I need to ask you, where did it all begin for you? Kind of talk me through the starting point of where it all began for you on your journey into performance.
Sure. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a singer. That's all I wanted to do. I loved singing. I just wanted to be a singer. And so that got me into choir when I was, you know, a little kid. And from there, I did like my first school musical. I think I was in the 7th grade, and I loved it. I just loved it. I loved it so much. I really wanted to do it just to be, you know, doing something on stage, just to do something in performance. I wasn't necessarily trying to become an actor. It was the music that I was excited about, but I really loved it. So I kept doing musicals as a result of that. And then it wasn't until I would say like 17 or 18 that I thought, this is what I want to do as an actual career. So there was a summer, I think I was 17, and a theater company in Edmonton, which is in Alberta, the province that I grew up in Canada. And this theater company had a summer program where they would cast kids from across the province. You'd all go to Edmonton for the summer. And it was about learning professional theater, what it was like to work professionally. So you had the 8-hour rehearsal day. You had to follow the union rules. You were given union breaks. You were working with actual equity professionals. And it was really about discovering, is this what you're going to want to do with the rest of your life? Is this the career you want to go into? And after that first summer, I was like, oh my God, there's nothing else in the world that I would rather do. So that's kind of where it started. Yeah, I've never really stopped since.
Wow. So then from that, so I mean, that's fascinating. I remember I started when I was younger, and it was, again, I think we get bit by the performance bug at some point in our lives, us performers, right? So like, I remember I was doing a school play, and there was me and my friend Rachel at the time, and we got to play the bullies, and it was a school play all about bullying, and I loved it. Just like playing like an evil character. Loved it. There's so
best play.
Right. There's something to playing villains that you just thrive in. It's almost like you're allowed to like let loose and go a little bit more wild. And I kind of love that. And that was the moment for me when I was like, I really enjoyed this. And it was like that feedback loop as well, when you get applause and everything like that each night. And there's something in that where you're like, this. It is weirdly, it's not to sound cheesy, but it is a little bit like a calling. You're like, yeah, this is what I want to do. And even going on from that, like other kind of plays I've done, like Our Country's Good, and playing like, you know, villains and stuff like that. And just, it's a great experience. I love that. But so kind of like when you went to that, which sounds amazing, the theater kind of company that you joined there in Edmonton, were you doing stuff like, were you doing like classical theater? Were you doing like Shakespeare, or were you messing around with plays? Were you doing very much musical theater? Like, what was the theme and the kind of the vibe of what you were doing there?
It was very much musical theater. So that was really most of my career has been musical theater.
Mm,
I've done a few plays. I haven't really done much Shakespeare. I did some Shakespeare in school, but I've never done it professionally, which is too bad because I really enjoy it. I love the challenge of it. I love
mm,
language, but it hasn't been. I find if you, or at least in the markets I've always worked in, if you're working a lot in musicals, you're not working a lot in plays. I
yeah.
think there's like a little bit of casting and direction, you get categorized, right? Oh, that
Hmm.
guy does musicals. That's a
Yeah.
musical guy. And so I think for a long time I was a musical guy. Not that I don't love or couldn't do the other things, but it was just tougher to get those opportunities. But and then I started doing more film and television work. Once I started getting, I played teenagers for a really long time. Once I started getting too old to play teenagers, but not old enough to play grown-ups.
Mm.
That's when I started doing more film and television work.
Gotcha. Okay. It's so interesting that as well. And you're right. You do get categorized like that straight away. Like, oh, you would be great in a musical. Yeah. You're the musical person. No, wait, you're more of a stage actor. And there's a weird like discipline as well. But I have to say, I've worked in both, right? I've done musicals and I've done stage. Musicals by far has been the hardest for me. I mean, you are learning dances, you are learning songs, you're learning script. It's like there's movement. You're all over that stage. And don't get me wrong, like both disciplines have their challenges, but musicals, wow. But I have to say, God, I enjoy them. Like,
I know, right?
so they're just so fun, especially when you're in the big ones where you already know the show tunes and it's just like you get that chance to perform them. Oh my God. And I mean, we mentioned a couple of them earlier there where you did like Avenue Q, which I have to say, when I was in New York, this was maybe 2018 when I was in New York, and I think it was off Broadway, and I hadn't heard anything about it. And my ex-partner at the time, it was like, oh, like we have to go and see this. Like, oh, okay. And I just laughed from start to finish. Like the scenes of like, just everything the puppets are up to, that scene when they have sex on, it was so fun. It was hilarious. So like tell me about Avenue Q.
Sure. So I first saw Avenue Q. It had most of the original Broadway cast, but it was in Las Vegas. There was this period where Las Vegas was trying to be like Broadway West. And there were all these Broadway musicals opening, and Avenue Q, I think was the big musical that kind of opened the theater at the Wynn Hotel. I could have all of these facts wrong, but it was at the Wynn Hotel. It was Avenue Q. And it was before they ended up shortening the show for Vegas, but we saw it before that. I was blown away. I loved the show so much. I was obsessed with that show. And it was the playing Princeton and Rod was all I wanted to do for years and years and years and years. And just as I kind of thought that, again, I thought I was getting too old for it. A theater in Calgary near my hometown was doing it. And I knew the director, so I sent him a tape, and I ended up booking that, and then I got a chance to do it at another theater in Vancouver and a small tour. So I went from thinking like, this is my dream show, I'm probably never going to do it, and then I got to do it for 6 months solid. And that was amazing. It's one of the few shows that I could do for years and years and years. I loved doing it so much. I really related to that character, moving to a big city. For me, it wasn't New York right away, it was Vancouver. But like moving to a big city to, make your mark on the world and learning, screwing up relationships, right? Making mistakes, being self-destructive, all of that stuff, discovering who you are, through all these tough lessons. I really, really connected to that character. So it was great to be able to do that show. And then the challenge of the puppetry as well. Puppetry is magic on stage. And Avenue Q is amazing because you've got the puppeteer there and you've got the puppet. You can see the hand is inside that puppet, but you believe the puppet is talking. You really see it come to life when when it's done well. So yeah, it was amazing being able to do that show.
Oh my God. It's like, again, going back to musical theater, it's another discipline. And now I have to learn puppetry and like,
Yeah.
create emotion through this attachment to you, right? But it's so fun. Like,
Mhm.
and as well, that aesthetic you're talking about, you're always on stage. You can see you literally have your hand up the puppet, but that's an aesthetic that's carried over into a lot of theater now. I mean, you see, like, you look at stuff like Warhorse, where you see actors on stage all the time who are controlling things. You kind of just forget about them, and you feel that emotion from the characters, or you laugh with them, or whatever it may be. But Avenue Q, I just remember I went in, I had no expectations because I knew nothing about it at all, and came away just loving it. I love that the
Yeah.
cast came out as well with the puppets, and you could like have photos with them later on. All of that was just
Cool.
really, really cool. It was really fun. It was really,
Nice.
really fun. I'd go and see it again. As well, you've done, okay, you need to tell me about Paradise Square. Tell me
Sure.
all about that.
So my journey with so Paradise Square was the first Broadway musical I did. It's the only Broadway musical I've done so far, and you know, it's a really special experience being able to get that first Broadway show.
Yeah.
So that is that's what I hold on to with Paradise Square. The show, shortly after it opened on Broadway, got hit really badly with COVID. So tons of people got COVID all at once. The show had to shut down for, I want to say 10 days, at least a week. So I got a phone call one day from my agent, and he said, hey, if there was a job that started tomorrow, could you do it? And I have two jobs. I have the job at Barry's. I work at a restaurant as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, I mean, it really depends on the job. If it's something up in Canada in Canadian dollars, like he said, no, it's in New York and it's Paradise Square. I said, oh yeah, absolutely. That's yeah. If this is real, like absolutely we'll make that happen. So basically what they needed at that moment was, if they were going to get the show open again as quickly as possible, there might be people that needed to go in and do the show like right now and learn the show instantly. So originally it was, if you get the show, you're going to have about 2 days of rehearsal, and then you're going to be on in certain elements of the show. So I hadn't done a musical in a few years. And by a few years, I mean like 8 years. So yeah, they wanted to see tape of me singing, which I was like, I have that, but I mean, it's ancient. So we sent it in, and
wait. Which song did you sing? I need to know.
It was I think I sent in a tape of Empty Chairs and Empty Tables from Les Mis that I had done. I mean, I think it was a decade old. I think it was 10 years old, this tape. And I can't remember what else we sent in. There was something else. My agents had a copy of something that I was like, oh, I didn't even know you had that. So we sent all that in, and they liked it, but they said, he's too young. And I said, well, of course you think I'm too young. The footage is 10 years old. I said, let me go and put something on tape for you right now. Which I did. I came into this room. I pulled out Beautiful City from Godspell, which I hadn't sung in ages. And the video is literally me, like I'm staring, the camera's like right here. I'm staring at the screen, I'm reading the lyrics because it's been so long since I've done the song. And we sent that in. And then a couple of hours later, I got the phone call from my agent that I'd booked the show.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Really cool. That was really cool. That was a great phone call. I'm not young. Like I'm 40. I just turned 40 years old. And so for me, getting a Broadway show was a dream that I'd kind of put on the shelf. I thought, I'm kind of not really doing theater very much anymore. I'm sort of, and come to peace with, okay, that's a big goal. I didn't hit that one. That's okay. So to get that phone call was, I mean, it really, really meant the world to me that I got that opportunity to work on the show. I was only on the show for 2 weeks. So it was a short time there. The plan was to have me come in and do vacations and things like that down the line. But unfortunately, the show didn't make it. It closed just a couple of weeks ago. So it was a short time on Broadway, but really, really meaningful. And I can't wait to go back and do another show.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, there's a lot to take from that. And I think one of the most important things is when you were talking about, you know, that was that phone call. And you'll never forget that. That's
No.
such a milestone in life for you. It's like a tick in the box of, I managed to do that. And that's incredible. It's funny, when you were talking there, it was reminded me, I had a girl called Lydia who was on this podcast last year. And she is a classically trained singer and she was part of the chorus. She just landed the chorus as part of Phantom. And it was, I know, right? I mean, come on. And then it literally started 2 weeks of touring and then COVID hit and it all stopped. And then that was it. It all just came to a stop. So it was, but in those 2 weeks, like well, you had weirdly 2 weeks as well. She was like, it was just magic and she was living her dreams. That's all she ever wanted to do was to be in Phantom. I mean, like a shame that it happened to her. And obviously, you know, you got 2 weeks, but those 2 weeks must have meant everything.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, I know there's a lot of, you know, a lot of drama with how Paradise Square closed and, you know, and that's really tough. But yeah, like I said, what I hold on to with that is just getting to work with that company was amazing. Oh, there was so much talent on that stage. Really, and a lot of them were Canadian. So a lot of, you know, the show did a lot of work in Canada. The lead producer is Canadian.
Yeah.
And so I got to do my first Broadway show with friends. I knew like my friends were in that show.
Even better.
Yeah. So that was really, really special to walk into Broadway theater for the first time and your friends are there waiting to give you a big hug. That was really special.
That you'll never beat that. Because like even that, you know, working within that, the realms of working with people like that, you already have that rapport built up. You can like bounce ideas off each other and stuff like that. And that's that you can't put a price on. You know, like when I've done performances before with musical theater with people like in, you know, my friends as well. And I'm like, oh man, like if I was doing this with strangers, like of course there would be like common ground, we all wouldn't know each other and be able to figure things out. But when you've already got that springboard of when you know people to bounce off, you cannot beat it. You really, really, really can't.
And especially when you're coming into something like the show was up and running. I was learning the show. So, and you got like very little time to do it. So you feel like you're in a pressure cooker. And to have people that you already know and trust in a situation where you're going to like, you know, feel a little out of your element, or do you know what I mean? Like, really trying to cram a 3-hour musical in your head as quickly as possible is not easy. No. So you have the support of not just, you know, all of the artists were so welcoming and kind, like no notes there. They were all amazing. But then also have your friends be like, yeah, absolutely. Let's go and run that thing in the lobby right now. Hey, you got to think about this on this step. This is how this dance move goes. Let's do it again. You know, that was really great. Like what a gift.
Oh man. It makes me miss stage work so much. It's been a long time since I've done anything on stage. And there is something about when when you are booked and then you're there and you're doing it and every night is that, you know, you just do like the stage huddle with your friends and everything like that. And you talk about afterwards, the applause you get. Like, as I say, that takes me back to when I got bitten by the acting bug. And then, as I say, I've done a lot of like theater. That's like predominantly where my background lies. I mean, I've done a little bit of TV and film as well, but just the discipline, the feeling, everything about that just feels so different. And whereas when you're on stage, I guess you are, you know, everything's bigger, right? You're trying to fill that room. You're trying to fill the auditorium with your voice, with your gestures. You're trying to like make sure everybody can see you on that stage, right? TV, it's almost like everything gets stripped back and it's like minute things. And it's a lot more naturalistic as opposed to kind of, they're different disciplines. You know, you're not shouting so that the back of the room can hear you because you've got microphones everywhere on a set. And, you know, you've got your spot that you stand in the camera and then everything's cut. And like, you have to learn a scene or a couple of scenes as opposed to learning the whole thing. It's a completely different discipline. And I have to ask you, which do you prefer? Do you prefer the stage work or do you prefer TV and film?
I actually kind of prefer TV. I really like working in TV. There's a pace to it. You know, there's a lot of stuff to do. There's only so much time you have to get it done. Yeah. And so like it really, really moves quickly. And what I like about that as an actor is it takes out the, you can't get in your head. You just can't get in your head. Like you have to keep moving forward. Yeah. You know, you rehearse it, you block it, you shoot it, and you keep moving on, you know? so I love that. I love the pace of it. It's different not having the, like, when the first time I was on a set versus being in a show, you don't have that. You don't have that audience. You don't know how well something's going to work until you might see it months and months down the line. If you watch it, I know some people, I like watching stuff, but so yeah, I really like television. I like taking all of the, as an actor, going from the stage of, like you said, like there's a size and a fullness to performance on stage that you need to fill that 700-seat theater. But I think if you're doing it correctly on camera, you're taking all of that and you're just really channeling it in. So you're not losing any of the vibrance of, a character. You're not losing any of the bigness of a story. You just have to really focus it so that it comes through on camera. And I love that challenge.
Yeah. No, that's, I think you put it better there when you were saying channeling it. You channel that energy in a different way and that performance in a different way. And, just the fact that even you've got a camera right there sometimes can be really invasive. And, it's a different discipline altogether in terms of how you approach a scene. And I just find it, I love it, like in the film work and the TV work that I've done, it's just fascinating. Like, even when you go on those sets as well, and like you can be like on location and the set is just this entire landscape, and yet you've got like that camera right there just capturing little moments that you're doing, and then you're moving around, and you are there are certain pressured moments as well when, as you say, it's like, right, we're going to do this scene, it's going to be very choppy, very quick, we're going to do this and this, we need to get it, let's go. And if you're somebody that works well under pressure, or kind of you have an idea of what you want to do, how you're going to do it, let's do it, it can be really efficient, but as well really fun, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I need to ask you about these TV shows, because these aren't just any old TV shows. I mean, we are talking some primetime stuff here. I'm going to start with Star Trek Discovery. Now, I have two questions. One, tell me all about how you landed the role. But also, please tell me everything in the world about your experience with Michelle Yeoh, because that woman is an icon. I need to know all about that.
Yeah, she's really, really wonderful. So I just auditioned for it. I just got a phone call from my agent. Star Trek Discovery shoots in Toronto, and I was living in Toronto. And like, I grew up watching Star Trek The Next Generation. So even getting the audition was really cool. I remember messaging my brothers going like, hey, I'm auditioning for Star Trek. Isn't that awesome? And I've been thinking about auditions in terms of like, you just go in, you do the thing, you leave it there, and you move on, And so it was cool to do the audition. And then I kind of, left it there and moved on. And it wasn't until I want to say it was actually a couple of weeks later that I got the phone call that I had booked it. And I lost my mind. Like, I really didn't think that was going to happen.
Yeah.
I was so excited. I was so happy. But I think the best part actually was the first costume fitting.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I got there, and you've got all the sketches of the different characters and everything in the production office. Go into the little change room, and there's a sort of like a base space suit that everybody kind of has. And I squeezed into it, skin tight, and come out into like the area where the fitters are, and they're doing the measurements and checking things out. And I'm standing in front of the mirror, and I just kind of like went, oh my God, I'm in a Star Trek suit. And I think the world disappeared for a moment, and they were asking me questions. And then I wasn't even really comprehending what they were saying. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm kind of having a moment right now. And they're like, that's okay, this happens. That was really wild. That was the first moment that I was like, oh my God, I get to do this thing that is massive and iconic, and that I grew up loving. I love those shows. I love sci-fi stuff. So yeah, that was probably that's my favorite moment of that experience. Shooting it was amazing. Everybody on that set was incredible, but that moment, like that hit, it was amazing.
I bet as well, because Star Trek it's a legacy, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it goes back to like, I remember like my dad like watched the original Star Trek, right? And
Yeah.
then, you know, we've had all the different iterations over time. I think Deep Space Nine is probably where I came into like Star Trek. And
Cool.
like, even like, you know, we've got stuff like Picard in that now, which is
Yeah.
incredible. And like, and then you step into Discovery and it's just, you can say you're part of that legacy, you know, and
Yeah.
that's, I mean, who else can say that they're part of a legacy of something that stretches back as far as something like Star Trek, which is incredible. And
Yeah.
honestly, like, I take my hat off to you. That must have been an incredible experience. And like, oh man, like I could talk about that for hours. I just,
That's pretty
just think
cool.
it's just amazing to be a part of something that has
Yeah.
meant something to so many people as well. But yeah,
Yeah.
tell me all about Michelle Yeoh.
So kind. So kind. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. I mean, everyone on that set was, I mean, it was really a really happy set. I
Yeah.
mean, it was very welcoming, um, really sweet and generous. I remember my first day, we were shooting, uh, it took place at, the episodes I've been take place in the mirror universe, and Michelle Yeoh's character in the mirror universe was this emperor, and so we were in this big sort of imperial room, and there was going to be like 50 extras or something like this. It's big, big, beautiful stage, massive shot, tons of people in the rehearsal of it. So when you're rehearsing, the extras aren't in the room with you, and I can't remember what exactly is happening in the scene, but you know, we'd like say, "Hail the Emperor," or something like that. And it would be me doing that with all of these extras, but they weren't there. And so I remember as we were doing the rehearsal, I was like, I think, you know, it wasn't really integral to the scene, but I thought, okay, well, if we were doing this in a rehearsal for a state, you know, I would do the line. And so I did the line with, you know, with all the gusto of me and 50 people behind me, right? And I felt a little silly. I was like, oh, is this extra, you know, new guy on set, just like really going in with everything he's got, right? And I remember Michelle saying to me afterwards, she was like, that's how you get remembered.
Mm.
And that meant the world to me. And she was really kind. You know, all of the stuff that I was in, I was with Michelle. I think she's so wonderful. She's so talented. She's one of the nicest people I've ever worked with. Her new movie is really, have you seen that?
Everything Everywhere All at Once. Oh, I was just going to ask you if you'd seen it. I
Yeah.
saw it when I was last in New York and I was honestly blown away. Like, so I'm a fan of Michelle, you know, I've loved like, my dad brought me up on watching a lot of like Asian cinema stuff like Shogun
Wow.
Assassin and like Seven Samurai, a lot of stuff like that. So I've seen a lot of Michelle Yeoh's kind of kung fu action films as well. And then, you know, even like coming up to more contemporary stuff when she was in like James Bond and like other stuff like that, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, right? And then I love her. And she blew me away with even more of a range of what I didn't realize she had. Like
Yeah.
that, the last kind of 20 minutes of that film, just, I mean, she's incredible in all of it, but especially that part blew my mind. I was like emotional in the cinema watching. I was just like, wow. Yeah, if she needs to win awards for that, like for that
I
film
really hope
alone,
so.
she's incredible. Everybody listening and watching, go and watch Everything Everywhere
Yeah,
All at Once. It's
truly.
amazing. That's why as soon as I saw like, oh my God, he's been in Star Trek, I need to ask him about Michelle Yeoh like immediately. But yeah, I'm a big sci-fi fan as well, which, you know, Jeremy, I sent you a message and I was like, have you watched Buffy? And you were like, I haven't. Can we just? I mean,
I'm sorry.
it's cool. I will bring that back up again. Anyway, so
Right.
no, but you should definitely go and check it out.
I have so many friends that love that franchise, and I really enjoyed the movie. But I
Mm,
can't remember. I think that series was really big when I was in theater school. So I couldn't afford cable. Like I just, it wasn't in my world, you
yeah.
know? And so, of course, like years later, I was like, oh, I didn't realize it was such a sensation. And yeah, I have to go back and watch it. I've seen little bits and pieces over the years, but
Yeah. I mean,
I'm
it's
getting
part.
old, like focus.
I mean, it's part of like pop culture, right? Like everybody kind
Yeah,
of, even if you haven't seen it, if I say Buffy the Vampire Slayer, you know what I'm talking about.
of course.
It's one of my favorites. It's like, oh God, I've been obsessed with the show for years. And Sarah
Yeah,
Michelle Gellar again is like an underappreciated actress, in my opinion. She's just,
absolutely.
and when you watch the show, we'll come back to this conversation. We'll talk all about it. But yeah, it's amazing. But yeah, I'm a big fan of sci-fi as well. And speaking of sci-fi, I mean, this show at the moment is, I mean, it's just huge. And we're talking about The Expanse. Like,
Mhm.
honestly, the feedback and when you hear conversations about people talking about The Expanse, it's just so beloved. Tell me all about your experience of working on that show.
It was another really, really special experience, you know. That was one, you know, we were talking about walking onto a set and being in a different world. Like
Mm.
that was just absolutely immersive. Every single set was, I don't know how to explain it other than like,
Wow.
you're like, I feel like I'm in space. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like I'm in space right now. It was so neat. I had a great time. Everybody was really, really wonderful. The second episode that I'm in, you know, spoiler alert, my little character dies a pretty extraordinary death. I don't know how to describe the prop even.
Oh,
There
okay.
is so okay, so we're doing these experiments on kids in these episodes, and I'm one of the sort of the technicians helping in these experiments. And one of the kids is responding poorly, I should say, or I guess, to these experiments. And uh, you don't see it happen, but he like dissects my body. So we were shooting, and I was like sitting, hanging out, and we've got, all the chairs, right? And it's me, the kid who's playing this character, and his parent is there. And I remember the director coming up and being like, "Hey, so we're doing this scene tomorrow, and we just want you to know it's really graphic. The What's going to be on the set is really graphic." And so they had like, a great conversation about what that was going to look like, so that there wasn't any surprises. And I remember seeing the props. So it's like my full body, but half of it kind of dissected, like the nervous system, the bones, like all the it was amazing. I remember seeing the picture of it and being like, "Oh my God, that looks so much like me." I It was wild. Like the beard, the beard was perfect.
Wow.
The hair was
What?
perfect. I couldn't believe it. I was like, "Oh my God, I'm like staring at my corpse right now." It was wild. And it didn't even have, in the final shot, like there's a lot of blood and everything, obviously, but it didn't even have all of that yet. And it still looked really, really eerily accurate. That was the wildest experience. But yeah, it's cool. Working on sci-fi is really neat because it's so easy to like buy into these worlds because they're 360 degrees. You've got these, the costumes are a little extra, right? Because it's in a different time, and technology and all of that. So you walk onto these sets and it is so immersive.
Mm.
And it's really exciting to get to play in those worlds. Yeah, that's what I loved the most, working on both The Expanse and Star Trek. And I didn't really know much about The Expanse when I started working on it. So it's been amazing to know just how beloved that show is, and I'm so happy that it got second life with Amazon, and that universe is continuing on, because yeah, it's really cool, really great stories, really interesting. And I like the darkness to it. And it is an honor to work on these things. It really is. I really
Yeah.
mean that. That might sound kind of hokey, but it is an honor to get to step into these worlds that people have created. And I mean, these are small parts that I played in both of these shows, but to be able to contribute into those universes, literal universes, and things that mean so much to people, it really is. It has been the most wonderful part of my career, I think, it has been working on shows like this.
I'm really not even surprised. Like when you take on something like that, like something like The Expanse or like Star Trek, it's kind of like what I was saying before about the legacy. Like you're stepping into, as you said, like it's another world, but it's also a world of like fandom. It's like how big, how it, if like, it impacts different people. It impacts like, people that sit and watch that show and come back and watch it every single day and every single season. It's a big part of their lives. And you kind of like slip into that as well. And I totally get that. The responsibility that you have within that is just phenomenal, but also it's a pleasure. Like, it's weird. Sci-fi is never a genre that I've worked in yet. I'm dying to, but yeah, it's exactly how I imagined it is how you've just described it. It is kind of stepping into that other world. And when you get like budgets like that, when you've got big sets which are built and, you know, the costumes and everything like that, that must just transport you there, like as an actor. And that's just, oh, what a feeling. What, you can't put a price on a feeling like that, right?
No, you can't. You really can't.
Yeah. And then, okay, so this last show I'm going to ask you about is Good Witch. The hilarious thing is, when I saw that you were in this, my mother will know your face because she's watched every episode of Good Witch.
Yeah,
And
that's awesome. I love that.
she loves it. And like every time I go over and see them, she's telling me about new episodes that she's seen and everything like this. So tell me all about Good Witch.
Sure. You know, it's funny. All of these shows happened in one summer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I had a really awesome summer that year.
Yeah.
So it was just like I booked show after show after show, which was so exciting. And I think The Good Witch was like one of the last ones that I booked. It was really it's just like such a sweet story. It was like, you know, this guy. I think the episode is about their it involves like a dating app. And anyways, so I'm played this guy who's like, you know, house sitting for his brother and goes into this bookstore and meets this girl. And so just, you know, really like just nice, sweet, a little romantic. So again, it wasn't a lot of, I think it was just, I think I had two scenes in it. One was at this house and then the other was in this bookshop, this really cute little bookshop. It was great to just do like these little, just a sweet little scene, you know. The actor that I was working with was so kind and lovely. And again, my gosh, I know I keep saying like, oh, these are just such warm, wonderful sets, but it's making me realize like how fortunate I am to have over that summer of working on these shows to get to work with such kind, awesome people. And I love that. That's, you know, because I've been on sets that aren't awesome. I've been on sets that are tough to be on, where people aren't happy. Good, which was great. It was really cool. And, you know, again, actors that I've seen on TV a million times before. So, you know, you get to go and work with these people that you've watched and experienced their work. And yeah, really, really, really meaningful. And I love that. I love that it means, you know, I love that your mom has seen every episode of it. Like, I think that's so cool, you know? And there's a really big heartedness to that show, you know? There's that little twinkle of magic, of course. It's great that we can do that for people, especially nowadays. Like, the world is so messed up. So having those, you know, sweet, kind, loving, magical stories that mean something to people is great. And it's yeah, fun to step in and play a little part.
Absolutely. I think the way you described it there is perfect. And, you know, like a lot of people, like you know, I've been a massive like film and TV buff all of my life. And that comes from my parents because they've like spent a lot of time. They used to go a lot before streaming services. They were always at the cinema, like watching films and then, you know, like watching TV shows. As I said, my dad watched the original Star Trek and stuff like that. And I think, you know, that's kind of passed on to me. And even stuff like, you know, I mean, I could talk about Buffy the Vampire Slayer until I'm dead. Like literally just because I love it that much. But sometimes people will ask me like, you know, well, it's a TV show. Like, you know, why are you going on about Buffy? You know, it hasn't been on for that long. And it's what you said is that it means something to people, not just because it's a TV show, but because it's the way it made them feel at the time of watching it. And, you know, it's that nostalgia, you know, you keep that with you the whole time of how it made you feel, how you identify with themes in the TV show, how you identify with the characters, and you remember that. It's that emotional connection that you build with stuff like that. And that's the perfect sense of media, right? It's that connection you build. Like when you hear that album that you love for the first time, you never forget it. And you listen to it again and again to recapture that moment. You know, you watch TV shows again and again to feel that moment again. And it's exactly that. And us as actors to be a part of that, to be able to play that and give somebody that experience whilst having that experience ourselves, I think is such a unique way of experiencing our jobs, right?
And good stories what gives an audience an emotional connection into a story is that we're able to see ourselves in that story somehow.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, a good story welcomes us in and shows us something about ourselves. You hook in, you relate to the main character in some way because you see yourself in those stories. You can see yourself in those worlds. And I don't mean like literally like, oh, I identify with the Good Witch, but there's something about that character that your mom connects to, you know, she sees herself in that character somehow, whether it's that little bit of magic or whatever it is, right? And that's so fascinating. That's so fascinating to me to know, you know, when, you know, there's something about Buffy that you see, there's something of you in that, you know, and that's why you've got that emotional connection. So it's you're absolutely right to be able to step in and do something that someone can see themselves in, see something a part of their world, see their hopes, desires, their dreams, their aspirations. And they come along with you for that. Oh, it's so special.
Absolutely. It's definitely one of the blessings of performance, I have to say. I mean, speaking of that, obviously you have highlighted some of the kind of, you know, highlights of your career, whether it was, you know, slipping into that suit on the Star Trek set for the first time or, you know, landing your show, like being on stage and doing the musical. But what are, you know, some of the other highlights, would you say, that you've had in your career along the way, Jeremy?
Oh, that's a great question. Being inspired by different people that I've worked with, you know, and a lot of those are folks that are not in massive television shows. It'll be like, you know, the folks that you worked with on a show in Edmonton or on a, you know, a little musical that you did outside of Toronto. And what I've learned from those people and how those people have inspired me, or even, you know, it's even things like sometimes like the auditions that you didn't get. Like, you know, you mentioned Warhorse earlier, and I auditioned for Warhorse when they were doing, as it was coming to Toronto. And just going through that audition process was really meaningful and exciting, you know. You do these puppetry workshops where you start with like, you know, paper man, teaching it how to walk and trying to give life to it, you know, some crumpled up paper, up to the last puppetry call was in the horses. We were in the Warhorse horses, you know. I was inside Joey. I was, you know, in the heart section of Joey.
Oh, wow.
And just doing that, right? Like I didn't book the show, unfortunately, but having that experience was so special. I think it's little moments like that, you know, or times that you bring yourself to an audition and you can walk away really proud of the work that you've done. I had an audition once for the play Red, which is one of my favorite plays. And it just went so well. I was really proud of the work that I did in that room. And it was for a director that I'd actually worked with before. And after I'd worked with him, I'd gone and done a lot of professional development and some more training, and came back and auditioned for Red for him. And he called me afterwards, and he was blown away by the progress that I had made. And that was really meaningful to me because he's one of my favorite directors. And I didn't book that part, but it was okay because I was so happy with the work that I did in that room. I was proud of what I brought to that. And I was happy that obviously, you know, this director, this colleague of mine who I respected so deeply, acknowledged that and saw that as well. I think those are moments that are honestly like, yes, getting the phone call that you're going to be in a Broadway show is great. Yes, the Star Trek suit is so cool. You know, like those are really impactful moments. But I think for me in my career, the highlights that mean the most to me are also little things like that are not necessarily, you know, a resume credit or a a success story, but little moments where you go like, yeah, I'm heading in the right direction. I'm doing something right. And I can be proud of the work that I did. Those are the things that I think are, you know, sort of low key, amazing highlights to me.
That makes complete sense to me. I think the most important part of what you've said there is that, you know, all of the learning that you take from those experiences, right? Like everything that you've done in that audition, you've then tweaked or like worked on, or it's lets you to then build on something that you brought to the next audition and the next one and the next one. Yeah. And all of that has led up to you getting that yes, right? And it's all of that you've needed to get that no, and that space that you need to experiment, to work on, to develop has been so important to get that yes. It's so easy to look on a resume and just see all of like, oh, that's everything you've been in, but you kind of don't see the experience over here, which was, this is everything I did to get to that point. Yeah. But that because you've worked on that, you've developed yourself, you've been to those auditions, you know how they run, you kind of get a feel for them, and you use kind of experiences from before and you build up to that yes. And that's what's really, really important. And I love that. I remember when you were talking about before, like when you kind of had that moment of when you felt like, God, I've made it, this is it. I had a little bit of that when I'd done a lot of extra work, and it was the first time I was in a featured role in a film, and it's a film called Tales from the Lodge. And I remember like stepping onto set, and again, I approached set just like I was an extra, so I was kind of with everybody else. And then the first time I was taken for like, separately and treated like, a featured role. And I was like, wow, people are calling me by my name. This is bizarre. And then even, because when you're an extra, it's kind of just you're part of the horde, right? Yeah, and then exactly. I got like my own like costumes, and then it was the moment when, and this is so small, but it was when like the crew were on the radios and they're like, okay, Adam's on set. We're bringing Adam to set. All right, Adam's in place. And just hearing my name like that, I was like, wow, like it's actually sinking in. Like I'm doing something like featured here. This is incredible. And then just to have, it was weird that performance for me, I had no lines to learn. It was just all because I appeared in like memories of people talking about me. So it was all flashbacks. And that for me, was a different discipline itself. There was no lines to learn, but it was incredibly emotional because they were talking about emotional memories that they had with me and with this character. And that was incredible. It was just, I wasn't used to not being able to speak to convey emotion, but I just loved it. And it was that moment, as I say, when I heard over the radio, it's like Adam's on set. Well, okay, that's a wrap on Adam. When I heard that and everyone cheered for me, I was like, I am not used to this, but it really was a feling of I've made this. And nice. I totally get that. I really do. Yeah. Connect with you on that 100%.
And that's the interesting thing about, film and television versus theater is that theater is essentially still a literary art form. It's very much about, language, whereas film and television is visual. Like think about a film like WALL-E. Like there's really no dialogue in it, right? It's all visual. All the storytelling is visual. So yeah, it is different. The first time you're working on sets and stuff and going like, oh, there isn't lines, but there's still so much. All the storytelling is still happening. We're just seeing it as opposed to listening to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember I had a scene where I was right next to a lake, and I had to get really upset. And there was just this gust of wind hit me in the eyes at the right time. And then when you watch the cut, there's a tear coming down my cheek. And I remember inside, I was like, yes. But at the time I was like, like really like trying to hit that mark. But yeah, and then that whole scene that is in the film, it made it. So I was like, oh, thank God for that. But yeah, it's just, it's cool. And again, I got to play an enemy in that. So I was like, I love that. It's just so much fun, especially when you see the arc of that enemy and how they get to that point. It's just, it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. And I completely connect with you on that. But I need to ask you as well, Jeremy. So like being an openly gay actor within the industry, I think can have a lot of challenges, and there's a lot of kind of burdens which, we have to work through. And I think the reason why I wanted to talk to you about this, I think it's really important to address because you read stories and you read, biographies about actors, openly gay actors who've had to do things like, I know, for example, the actor Colton Haynes, he was told he had to deepen his voice when he first got into acting, and there's like, we can go through periods in our lives of when we come out as gay people and then almost have to go back in as actors. And I find that so weird. I mean, don't get me wrong, like, I'd like to think that we're in a society now where it's a lot more open and accepted on sets and as everything, as you say, like that. But there was a time period for a long time in acting, and I think it still goes on now to a degree where you do have to go back in and you have to kind of give that ambiguity about that. And, there are differences. For example, if you're playing straight characters and everything, I completely understand that. But when you've been told as a person that you have to present more in a heteronormative way in order to land a role, there's a bit of a burden that we have to bear with that. And I think for a long time, to speak about my experience for a little bit, I didn't come out until later in life. And I think one of the main things that I really got from acting was it allowed me to play somebody else. So I could kind of leave Adam alone for a little bit. And that was during a period of time when, you know, I was struggling with my own sexuality, and there was outside forces which made things very clear that they wouldn't be accepting of that. And so because of that, when I was on stage, I was somebody else and I was getting the applause and the feedback, which I never thought I'd be able to get when I was Adam.
Right.
And I think it's really interesting that that still happens. I just want to talk to you a little bit about your experience with that. Obviously, being an openly gay actor, you know, you're within the industry. How has that been for you?
When I went to school, there was a lot of, you know, you need to be aware of this, and that'll affect your work. You know, you need to place your voice like this, and you know, if your elbows are close to your body, you kind of look feminine. Like I got all of that stuff. I heard all of that, you know, and I think it played, I think it weighed on me for sure. I know that I thought about it a lot. I thought about my voice a lot. The first film that I did, I pretended that I was straight on set, and I'm kind of ashamed of it, to be totally honest. I remember getting there and being like, I don't know these people. This is the first time I've been in a movie. And, you know, I don't know why. I honest to God, I've thought about this a million times, and I cannot put my finger on why I thought I won't be welcome here if they know I'm gay.
Yeah.
And I know they saw it from a mile away. I know they saw it from a mile away. I remember that somebody asked me something about, you know, my girlfriend or some of this. I was like, oh yeah, she does whatever else. And I was like, oh, I can see on their face that we're like, your girlfriend, like, you know. And then I brought my my partner at the time when we went down, when I went to the premiere. I brought my partner, and I was like, I'm just, you know, I'm not gonna pretend this anymore. And I can't remember who it was. One of them said something. I was like, "Oh, this is your girlfriend, huh?" And we had a little laugh about it. And
yeah,
you know, nowadays it's funny because, you know, it is a topic of conversation more of being, you know, representation, being able to be yourself. You know, when we're acting, we're playing different people. Like it shouldn't matter. So whatever the reasons are, I don't know. It's, you know, whether it's people with money paying for movies going like, we're just afraid that if someone's gay, they won't buy him as a straight character or whatever. I don't know what the reasons are behind like what fuels all of it. I just know as actors why, or at least for me anyway, why I got caught up in that is, or worried about having to present as heteronormative is, I love doing this and I want to be able to do it. And there was the fear of, if I sound the way I sound, or I look too effeminate or whatever, that I won't get to do it. If someone knows I'm gay, I won't get to do these kinds of parts. I'll only be able to play, you know, Jack from Will and Grace kind of parts for the rest of my life, you know? I don't let any of that shit bother me anymore, honestly, for a few reasons. A, I think it's dumb. B, it never made me happy. Never made me happy trying to be like, oh, I have to try to be something else in order to work in this business. And I think things are improving. Or I hope things are improving. I have gotten to the point in my life where I just don't care what other people think of me. Like I'm just not bothered by other people's opinions. So if someone doesn't want to cast me in a particular role because they think I read too gay, then cool, fine, don't. I probably don't want to work with you now anyway.
exactly.
You know? I would just much rather just be myself, bring myself to the characters in the same, in the way that I do as an artist. And if that fits what we're doing here, great. If it doesn't, go find the person who does, and that's great, you know? But no, I can't, I don't think it's good for us to be shy about who we are. And I do know that there are a lot of, I know actors who spent years and years and years in the closet because they were afraid it would hurt their careers, even though they, tons of gay men and women around them working, queer people working in the industry. No representation is not where it is in terms of, queer actors playing queer characters in, stories that revolve around that. Like, absolutely, we have so much work to do there, for sure. But yeah, I'm just at the point where I just kind of go like, cool, I just want to do what I do. If there's straight parts, whatever. Like, if you don't want to work with me, fine, whatever. I'm just going to be myself. I'm not going to worry about trying to sound more straight or look more straight or what I just can't let it bother me. It's out of my hands. It's out of my control. I just want to do the thing that I do. And if you like that, great. If you don't, then that's cool. That's on you.
Yeah, and I think that's the best way to approach it, to be fair. I mean, for God's sake, Jeremy, you said you're 40, like I'm 35, like, we're over it, right? Like we are over it. It's their loss at the end of the day. If that's something which means something to them, that they're going to use that as a preemptive to not work with you, then that's their loss at the end of the day. It's just funny how you read so many things, like and it's not just subject to acting. I mean, it's like musicians and everything like that as well, like pop stars. I mean, I remember the pop star like Anastasia, when she first started, I think she was like maybe 30 or 31 when she had her first hit, I'm Out of Love. And when she started working with the team, they were like, how old are you? She's like, oh, like 31. And they were like, no. You tell everybody you're 29. It's like, what does that even mean? It's like, but like, I think, that was obviously a time period, which it was more heavily, I guess, a subject of contention, like, at an earlier time. I think now we're in a much better place, and we still have, as you said, and you said beautifully, we still have so many we have so far still to go. But I think it's so important to address that in terms of just, your experience and like how, you've potentially had to deal with that and how you approach that now. And I think, that's the best way. Just, you don't want to work with me for that reason. If that's something, then maybe I don't want to be on your set, because if that's what you're going to be like with me, what are you going to be like on that set with other people, right?
It's also an opportunity for queer people to be creating interesting queer stories. Like I said earlier, I'm not in love with the idea of sitting around waiting for a phone call to be told you get to do something that you want to do. If we want to see representation in mainstream cinema, television, theater, what are we waiting for? Let's make it. Let's make it, We'll talk about like, you think like iconic characters like James Bond, and maybe the next James Bond should be a woman or a person of color or queer or whatever else. I'm like, or let's make one. Cool. Let's tell an awesome like action spy story, and it's a queer character. Like, great, that sounds awesome. I'd watch that.
Yeah.
I think that's the real opportunity that we have right now. Is I don't love the idea. I honestly really don't love the idea of even like, as a community shouting and going like, people need to be putting our stuff into stuff. People need to be, putting queer characters into their things. I'm like, no, let's go out and make our things. Let's go out and do them on our own. Let's not wait around for, or insist upon culture, or writers and directors and stuff to be, telling our stories for us. No, let's get out there and be the ones that tell the story. Let's write the stories. Let's be the directors. Let's be on the set. Let's be the people creating our stories. I think there's a real opportunity there for all of that. Not that people should be writing great queer characters. Don't get me wrong. But there are amazing queer artists that can be creating these mainstream amazing stories.
Yeah, completely agree with you there. And again, it's just, there's that wealth of experience from queer people as well. And, we can, going back to what we were saying about we identify with something in characters, we identify with experience as well. And it's completely that again. And let's go out and just make that. There's so many talented people out there in the world, especially queer artists who are telling stories. I mean, I've got like Heartstopper behind me at the moment, a perfect example of when that blew up on Netflix, right? Again, and I identify with that because that was me in school, and it's just, And that's fantastic. And again, there's a lot of queer kind of performers that are involved in the production of that as well. And that's amazing. That's incredible to see. And that experience is imprinted on that because that's real life experience. But again, even just as you say, allow that space for people to tell their own stories, queer people to tell their own stories. And that's phenomenal. We are getting a lot more of that, which is fantastic to see. And I am here for it. Put me on those sets. Let's go. I'm here for that.
Yeah. So let's be the ones like getting the financing. Let's be the ones you know what I mean? Let's executive produce our stuff. Let's go out and be the people,
Yes, absolutely. Did you watch Heartstopper?
Oh my God, I devoured it.
Oh, right.
I loved it. I thought it was so sweet. I watched that show going like, oh, I wished there was something like that when I was, a little queer teenager. Like, oh my God, I grew up in a small city. I didn't know any gay people, let alone have like a sweet high school romance. Oh, I loved it for that. I thought, oh my gosh, it would have been so impactful for me having something like that at that point in my life to not feel so alone. So I think it's really, gosh, I think it's such a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful story. And I should be reading it is what I should be doing.
There you go.
Get even more of it. But.
No, I agree. It's like, I mean, I didn't have that young romance, but I think it's so relatable because it's set in England. I mean, they even mentioned like going for a cheeky Nando's at one point, which is like my language. But yeah, it's just, as you say, it's super sweet. And what's nice about that is we get so many queer narratives that revolve around trauma or that there's something happens to the queer character. And it's like, what's nice is that this is just a sweet, well told, lovely, just feel good story as well. Yes, there's moments of drama in there, but it's feel good. It's happy. It makes you feel good watching it. It just touches you. And I loved it. I was like, I devoured it. And I'm ready for seasons 2 and 3. Let's go.
Oh, is there more? There's more coming?
Yeah. Seasons 2 and 3. They only covered the first 2 volumes in the show. So we got more. And there's another volume coming out as well. So there's more coming.
It's great news. This is great news.
Absolutely. I hope that's made your day. But
it did. It really did make my day.
All right, Jeremy, what does the future hold for Mr. Jeremy Crittenden? So tell me, do you have any like projects coming up that you're allowed to talk about in the future? And as well, you were talking about like, wanting to step behind the camera a little bit as well. So do you have anything that you kind of workshopping that could potentially be happening there as well? Let me know what's happening.
Sure. I mean, I'm out auditioning right now and spending a lot of time, like I said, working as a creator and learning about photography and sort of short form storytelling. So my focus right now is on just continuing to be ready, creating whenever I can create. I've been doing some online film school stuff, which is really awesome and exciting. And I'm really trying to take the time now to sort of design my future and not sit here and be like, oh, I hope good things happen to me, but do whatever I can, do whatever is in my power to be ready for opportunities. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's one thing to be like, oh, I want to be a director and sit around waiting and hoping for at some point to get that opportunity, or learn about filmmaking, learn about those techniques, create short form stories, whether it's, cracking a joke on Instagram or whatever. You're still learning. I'm still trying to take lessons from absolutely every single thing that I make. So that's sort of where my focus is right now. And with these courses that I'm doing, the final project is doing like a short film, like a 3-minute film or something like that. And I'm so excited to do that. I don't know what it'll be yet. I haven't written it or anything, like we're not there yet, but I'm excited for that because it's, it's just sort of taking it's taking the bull by the horns, going, oh, this is something that I want to do in my life. I'm just going to go out and do it. I'm going to go and do it. And, I'm excited about that. I'm halfway through my life. I want the next half of my life to be happy and exciting and creative and be marked by things that I've made, that I have been in control of, things that I own, things that are of me. So that's where my focus is right now. And of course, auditioning for audition for those things that are waiting by the phone for someone to come in and give permission to work. Absolutely. Doing all of that too.
No, I love that. And I mean, I love that. That sounds fantastic. And again, it's like setting yourself a goal and then you're working towards that. So right now you're doing this course, you know, that you've got to do like a 3-minute film at the end of it as well. That's the goal that you're working towards. And that's fantastic. And again, as we mentioned before, you'll take that experience, you'll set yourself another goal maybe in the future, and then you'll use that experience to work towards that. And that's incredible. And I think
I'll find out that I hate it, or I'll find out that I hate it and I'm terrible at it. And then I go, cool, that's not a thing we're going to do anymore. You know?
Yeah, but you tried it.
Exactly. And so that's a big part of it as well, of going like, oh, I think I am of value here. So let's dive into that and see if I'm right. And if I'm wrong, cool, you know, but at least it's all learning. I just love doing this stuff.
Yeah, man. And that comes across, and you speak so eloquently about your experience and, you know, even your time on set, your time on stage and everything like that. And, you know, you're still pursuing that now. You haven't lost the taste for it. And I think that's so important, you know, that you're finding ways to continue pursuing that. And that's what it's all about, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Jeremy, tell me, where can everybody find you? So this is the section when you can just pimp out all of your socials. Tell me, where can everybody find you? They want to give you a follow.
Sure. I'm Jay Critty, JCritty on most platforms. The only one that I'm not is TikTok.
Oh man, someone got it.
Somebody got it. They're not doing a damn thing with it, which is probably good. So I'm Jay Critty on TikTok, but Jay Critty on Instagram and Twitter. I don't really do Facebook. Yeah, you can see me on all those places. JeremyCrittenden.com is my my website that sort of has my demo and sort of acting career focused. But yeah, I think also, like, you know, as you can see, I'm thinking about doing my own podcast and expanding sort of those things, you know, finding new opportunities to connect with people and tell stories. And but yeah, Instagram is really the place, I think, to sort of follow whatever shenanigans I'm up to.
There you go. So everybody go and type in Jay Critty and just follow him on everything. So yeah, if you want to follow the podcast, we are Into You Podcast. If you type that on all platforms, that is Instagram, Twitter. Basically, if you type that in, you will see us on there. You'll see the podcast. Just give us a follow on there. The video portion of this podcast is also available on YouTube. So if you do want to check us out, watch us chat to each other all the way through this, then make sure you check that out as well. But it is available on streaming platforms as well. If you do want to find me, I am at Straughan87. That's pretty much on everything. That's Twitter, Instagram. You type that in, you'll see my face. So Jeremy, I just want to say a big thank you again for coming on to do this. This has been incredible. You're the first actor that I've spoken to on the podcast, which is amazing, because it's been so nice to like share experience as a fellow actor and just performer. So honestly, thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to do this. I really do appreciate it.
And thank you for having me. This is so great. I've had a really great time chatting with you.
Phenomenal. Well, thank you again so much. And thank you everybody for listening. And until next time, take care.